Hello Fluffballs, welcome to lesson 4 on health. This should take you around an hour. Before we start on today's activities, we need to review some material from year 5 that's going to be important in today's lesson. In order to survive, all living things need to move, respire, sense, grow, reproduce, excrete, and they need to have nutrients. But how do they get the energy to do all of these things? Well, your body is built from tiny building blocks called cells. Each cell has to make its own energy by doing something called respiration. In order to do respiration, your body needs two things: oxygen and glucose, which is a sugar found in food. Your body then combines the oxygen and glucose together in a chemical reaction called respiration. Most importantly, respiration releases energy so you can do all the other life processes. Now we're ready to start on our tasks. We'll start with SC7, which is to list the parts of the blood. Your job is to fill in the answers in the table as I show you this little demonstration of what blood is like. Okay, so here is our container that we're going to make our blood in, and I'm going to be representing a single drop of red blood with the stuff that I'm going to put in. Okay, so I'm going to start by putting in some water. The water is going to be representing the liquid part of the blood, and the liquid part of the blood is called plasma or blood plasma. So it's not actually red, the blood plasma, as you can see, and it's really important because it's where all of the nutrients can absorb into your blood. So things like glucose can absorb into your blood from your intestines into the plasma. Okay, next we're going to put in some polystyrene balls, and these are going to be representing white blood cells. So white blood cells are part of your immune system, and they are what fight off diseases. So if you get a bacterial or a viral disease, they can fight off that disease. Okay, next what we have going in are some green polystyrene packaging things, and I'm using those to represent platelets. So platelets are little things found in your blood that do a very important job, and what they actually do is they help your blood to clot. So if you were to get a cut and you were bleeding, if you didn't have platelets, you would just keep on bleeding and bleeding. But what these will do is help to form a scab and stop you from bleeding. So they are what form a scab and stop you from bleeding. Okay, last but definitely not least are coming the things that make your blood red. So I'm using red water pearls to represent the red blood cells in your blood, and they are what make your blood look red. The red blood cells are what absorb oxygen and carry it round your body. So inside of a red blood cell you have a pigment called hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is what can bind to oxygen. Hemoglobin actually needs iron molecules to work, so that's why you need iron in your diet. If you don't have enough iron, you can't absorb enough oxygen, and you have a disease that we call anemia. So you can see that there's many more of the red blood cells than anything else in your blood. Interestingly, red blood cells only live for about 2 weeks, and when they die they break down and they go into your feces or your poo, and that is actually what makes your poo brown, is all the dead red blood cells in there. And I think that's everything you need to know about red blood cells. So there we go, we have everything all added together now. So when we put all 4 of those things together, we call the mixture that we've created blood. So red blood cells, white blood cells, blood plasma, and platelets. There are other things, of course, in blood, but those are the main components. If you want to try this experiment at home, you absolutely could. You just need to decide on 4 things to represent the 4 parts of blood. And it doesn't have to be the same things as I used. If you want to use red water pearls, you can just order them easily off of eBay or Amazon. If you do decide to make your own blood, then I'd love if you uploaded a picture to Shobi into week 2 so I can have a look at the blood that you have made at home. But don't worry at all if you don't have the stuff to make some. Pause on here and use these answers to mark your own. Let's move on then to SC8, which is to be able to describe how blood flows around the body. So let's take a little look at this diagram in more detail. The lungs are where oxygen is absorbed into the blood. The intestines are where nutrients such as glucose are absorbed into the blood. The heart's job is to pump blood around the body. The heart pumps deoxygenated blood up to the lungs to collect more oxygen, and it pumps oxygenated blood to all the different parts of the body. For example, it pumps lots of blood up to the brain where it is needed. Wherever the blood is pumped, each individual cell in that area will then use the oxygen and glucose provided by the blood to carry out respiration. This allows them to create energy. All the organs and different parts of the body are linked together by a series of hollow tubes called blood vessels. We will use this string to represent the blood vessels. The blood vessels include the arteries, the veins, and then teeny tiny little ones called capillaries. So if you imagine this thick bit of string is a vein or an artery, they then divide into these tiny little blood vessels called capillaries. So let's take a look at the arteries first. The arteries carry oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood around the body. So they're carrying blood that has oxygen in it and blood that also has glucose in it to where it is needed. Now let's take a look at the veins. The veins carry deoxygenated, nutrient-poor blood. So blood that is low in oxygen and low in nutrients. They carry it back to be replenished with those things. So here I'm going to use some white and pink marshmallows to represent the blood. The white marshmallows are going to be the deoxygenated blood, and the pink marshmallows are going to be the oxygenated blood. Now obviously this whole process is a cycle, but let's just start at the lungs. So if we have deoxygenated blood returning to the lungs, it's coming back to the lungs so that it can absorb oxygen in the lungs. So the deoxygenated blood soon becomes oxygenated blood. So we're going to replace our white marshmallows with our pink marshmallows. So now we have some lovely oxygenated blood. So now our oxygenated blood goes back down to the heart so that the heart can pump it to the rest of the body. So it needs to go back down to the heart to be pumped. So let's look at where some of the blood gets pumped to. Well, some of it will get pumped up to your brain. So your brain will then absorb the oxygen and glucose in the blood and use the oxygen and glucose to make energy during respiration. So not all of your blood will travel to your brain. Other bits of your blood will go to, for example, your organs, like your digestive organs. It will go to your arms, to your legs, and every part of your body, really, because every single part of your body needs the oxygen and nutrients that your blood is carrying. Once your blood arrives at its destination, it will travel into the capillaries, the very small blood vessels, and the oxygen and nutrients will diffuse out of the blood and into your body cells. Once they are in your body cells use them in the process called respiration to produce energy. Once they have produced energy, your cells can then go on to do all the other life processes. For example, they can move, or they can grow, or they can reproduce by dividing in half. Now, because your body cells are using up the oxygen and nutrients in the blood, our oxygenated blood becomes deoxygenated blood. So we're going to swap out our pink marshmallows for our white marshmallows. So our blood now needs to get back to, first of all, the intestines, where it can pick up some more nutrients like glucose, and then it needs to get back to the lungs so it can pick up some oxygen. So remember, in order to get to these places, it needs to go via the heart so that the heart can pump the blood back to the lungs, where it can re-oxygenate and become oxygenated blood again. And that begins the cycle all over again. Now, if we didn't have the circulatory system providing us with oxygen and nutrients, then what would happen is our cells would all start to die because they wouldn't have any energy, and pretty soon we'd be dead too. You should now be able to do all the answers to SC8 multiple choice questions. Pause on this picture to check your answers for the first 3 questions, and pause here to check your answers for the rest of the questions. Make sure you've marked them thoroughly. On to SC9, which looks at the importance of the circulatory system. Pause and have a go at this question. The information at the very beginning of this video will really help you with this. Now click on the link in your booklet, watch the video as many times as you need to answer all the questions. Pause here to mark your answers to questions 1 to 4. Pause here to mark your answers to the rest. Now, we didn't mark the longer answer that you did, and that's because I want you to have another go at it. However, this time I'm going to give you a few tips. Tip 1 is to use short bullet points to structure your answers clearly. Tip 2 is to write a list of key words that you need to include in your answer. I've chosen oxygen, glucose, respiration, energy and life processes. Tip 3 is to read through your answer and check how many relevant points you've made. If your question, for example, was worth 3 marks, you need to make 3 relevant points. This is where the bullet points really help. Pause on here, read through my answer and then compare it to your own to see if you have written a well-constructed answer. Upload your final answer of SC9 to Shobi so that I can give you some feedback.